Hello, everyone. My name is Davide Terlingo. I'm the head of international arts at the Arts Council of Ireland, and I am with Lucy Devlin, international arts officer. Hello. So today we will guide you through the International Residency Initiative Schemes, or IRIS in short. The main purpose of this workshop is really to give you the best advice on how to make an applications in terms of making a successful applications. It's not so much on the technical aspects of applying to the Arts Council. Now, this programs is very much in line with the standard process of registration and submitting application across all funding programs of the Arts Council. So there is nothing special or different. If you have any questions about the technical aspects, you can either contact reception on our team and we can help you with these aspects. But really, I would like to focus today more on how to make a successful application, try to explain what this program is for, what we're looking for when we assess the applications. So the kind of more complex aspects really to try to navigate the Arts Council funding programs. These programs has been in place now for 5 years. This will be the 5th iteration of IRIS. We know it has worked very well, and we have received much positive feedback so far from applicants who receive funding. Has managed to support a large number of partnerships, international partnerships. Now, you will be also pleased to know that the program hasn't changed fundamentally since last year. So if you apply to this program previously, you should find what I'm about to say kind of the same, if not really just repetitive. Which is a positive note. The only things to point out that we only changed the way in which we address access costs. Okay, so as you go through the guidelines, pay particular attention to that section. There is now a different process for access costs that again has been introduced across all funding programs, not just this one. But now you need to report on access costs a bit separately. There is a different budget template. Again, if you have any questions about that, please ask us. There is an officer, there's a separate team looking after this aspects of the applications, but we can help you if needed. So going back to IRIS specifically, what I will do, I will bring you through the roots of the program, what was the policy framework that created it, and then slowly move forward across all the various priorities and also the various assessment criteria, and ultimately the way in which we adjudicate the applications. Everything will cascade through the international policy. Okay, so I think this is a good place to start. Because once I think the key concepts, the key terms on what we wrote in the international policy are really understood, as I say, everything will sort of kind of become awfully obvious and cascade, through the presentation. So the program, IRIS, was created primarily to address one of the points in the international policy, which was shared under the artist. And essentially, what the program aimed to do was to address these two paragraphs there, which have been extrapolated directly from the document. One is in relation to opportunities for artists to extend and reach the reach of their work and the resources available. Okay, so during the creation process, in terms of idea, collaborators, infrastructure, and finances. So this is quite important. So extend the reach of their work and resources for artists. And the other one is to prioritize stable exchange frameworks over short-term once-off opportunities. See, this program was, when it was created during the international policy period of consultation, it was apparent that there were many international activities taking place in Ireland. I traveled across the country, I talked to many organizations, many artists, and often these exchange opportunities happen with very limited resources, often in informal arrangements and instructions that they were very temporary, very unclear. And that often created difficulties for the artists participating in these international programs. There were difficulties in sense of payments or clarity of supports, but also in sense of just the longevity of these programs, okay, that's because of the informality. So what these two paragraphs try to address, as I say, is the way in which we support artists in their international practice, and the role of the organizations is to create these structures, these frameworks that enable exchange, but also enable this exchange in a well-resourced and clear environment. Okay, that is clear in terms of the arrangements for the artist, the type of resources that are required, and so on. So once this is really understood, then as everything else will cascade now in terms of what is in the guidelines. For instance, okay, in terms of the purpose, I took these two sentences out of the text that is within the section called purpose, okay, of the scheme. And one is to, as you will see, to create opportunities for transnational exchange and cooperation. And the other one is to facilitate diverse residencies programs that involve partnerships with organizations based abroad. Now, when taken in the context of what I just discussed in relation to the policy framework, I suppose that the purpose becomes sort of self-evident. Okay, this is essentially, we're just stating what we were trying to achieve in terms of the artists. So when you, as an organization, you apply under ARIS, you are really applying to create and deliver these frameworks. Okay, so this is the main purpose. The emphasis of the program is on the structures. It is not so much on the content of the residencies. What do we mean by that? What we mean by that is that we are really trying to emphasize on the quality of the partnerships, of the exchange, of the collaboration, rather than on trying to direct you towards specific kind of artistic activities. So we are not trying to say, let's say, you need to focus on a specific theme, or you need to work with a specific kind of artist, like emerging artist, or you need to, try to be too directive in terms of the content of the residency, or how long they need to last, or what art forms you should address, whether or not they should be on research and development rather than capacity building. Okay. So what we mean by diverse is this. Okay. So is that there is a quite large number of, a large amount of flexibility in terms of what the content of the approach of the residencies, whether they are on artists or curators or stage designers, or whether you're going to work with communities or not. Okay, this is not so much the focus of the program, but it is really important that you approach this program as making a case that you will be able to create and formalize these structures along with your partners. So again, moving down, zooming in. Then once we have the policy goals and the purpose of the scheme, we create a set of priorities which in a way kind of repeat, and expand a little this purpose. Okay. So the priorities that we then will use also for the assessment are four. Okay. One is the clarity of the proposed residency programs in terms of artistic aims, feasibility, and cooperation frameworks. I just read them and then I will expand them a little. The high quality of supports and opportunities offered to artists and or arts practitioners. A high level of reciprocal engagement and a balanced level of investments between partners, and the coherence between the proposed artistic activities and the resources available to the residency. So what we mean by this? Okay, so first of all, when we assess the applications, we look at how all the various elements fit together. Okay, it is sort of a general, probably component of assessing application with the Arts Council, but we want to see how the artistic aims and the practical components like the budgets and the schedule of activities, but also the formal agreements between organizations, they all sort of form a cohesive, consistent program, okay, that is clear, is clearly defined in the application. The second point refers really to what I was discussing in terms of the artist, okay? The high quality of supports and opportunities offered to the artist. So that we move away from, as much as possible, from situations where the artists are not sort of provided with appropriate payments, they're not provided with appropriate resources, they're not provided with appropriate supports and services in terms of communications when they are in Ireland, whether they are in Ireland or abroad, okay? So that there is a sort of a clear continuum of supports for activities taking place in Ireland, activities that are taking place in the transition between countries, and activities that are taking place in other countries. So the third point refers to sort of this, again, what was referring in the policy, the stable framework support. So how do we define stable framework supports? One of the ways we do so is by prioritizing a high level reciprocal engagement and the balanced level of investment. So we mean really here that we do not prioritize nominal partnerships where it is not entirely clear or entirely evident that the partners have agreed to sort of work on equal partners in sense of risk sharing or commitment, but also in how much weight each organization gives to this partnership. Now, does this mean that we are looking for much funding, or like there must be like 50-50 split in the resources invested in the program? No, this is not what we mean. We understand that depending on the situations, the countries, some countries have better resources, better supports than others. This program is open to countries all over the world, okay? So we understand it is not always possible to have much funding. We are not requiring this, okay? We're just asking for evidence that there is a true form of commitment and risk sharing between the partners involved in this proposal. And finally, the coherence between the proposed activities and the resources available to Residency. So this is in terms of an ambitious application, with significant number of people involved and a large significant time frame will probably require like consistent resources. Okay, so this is what it really means in practice. So that there is sort of consistencies in terms of volumes, but also in sense of the nature of the activities. Again, I come from a dance background, so I always tend to refer to these examples, but forgive me, but dance residency will probably require appropriate dance spaces, okay? So there must be a sort of coherence of the resources available to the artist. Also in terms of administration. Okay. So again, this line in green is just something that I put there to emphasize really the key words, okay? But the emphasis on the coherence of all elements as part of a whole and risk sharing, okay? Which is to summarize what I just said so far. So additional information. This is sort of the question we receive sometimes. Do we need to have public-facing activities? No. Okay, this is not a requirement. So the residencies can just happen in studio, or can be based on critical engagement discussions. There's no need for public engagement. However, the imprint of the Arts Council across our corporate policy is to always have an added bonus, okay, another point to public engagement. So of course, when all the elements are same, we will obviously prioritize activities that have also an engagement that benefit the audience as well. Okay, so just to keep in mind, but there is not a formal requirement, a specific requirement for the applications to have audience engagement. Also, although this has happened very rarely, but it has happened, just to remind you that remote residencies are eligible. So it is possible to have interesting structures where residencies are taking place on a sort of online or virtual space rather than physically. This is possible. Now, everything now moves down to the assessment criteria. Now, the assessment criteria repeat and capture the purpose, the priorities, and all the various aspects that we've been discussing so far. These are points that we use to guide our assessment. So usually, advisors, when they assess applications, are asked to provide a comment in relation to each of these points. So the assessment is it's really structured around these words. Okay, so it's important to sort of explain them a bit better. You will be familiar with some. Okay, for instance, the first assessment criteria is the quality and sustainability of the proposal. Now, what do we mean by that? Okay, we usually look at the track record of the applicant organization and all partners involved. We do not require specific CVs or anything as part of the application process. Most of the staff at the Arts Council will be familiar with the applicant organization. If not, we look at the websites. If you never applied before, perhaps provide one. If you don't have, if you haven't, perhaps somewhere else in the application, but please maybe mention somewhere. But we also look, if we are not familiar with the partners, we usually look at the partners' websites. We try to navigate a bit the sense of who they are. Of course, it's very hard to be familiar with all organizations all over the world. So some help in that sense might be useful. And we also look at the quality of engagement with artists, arts practitioners, and the public. So again, this really reflects what we discussed so far. The quality of engagement with the artist is like how clear the frameworks of supports are, okay, as mentioned before. And also, as mentioned before, we will look at the coherence of activities in relation to the overall artistic aims, okay. If you're trying to achieve perhaps capacity building within the sector, okay, let's say we want to see activities that are clearly focused on strengthening the artist practice, or perhaps increasing their critical discourse within an art form, and so on. Perhaps provide some sort of mentoring. There must be coherence between these activities. I know that some things seems obvious, but we spell everything because obviously then we try to guide as much as possible the applicant, what we're looking for. Now, the second criterion is on the purpose of the award. Again, this is a reiteration of everything we discussed before. So what we do, we look at the level of reciprocal engagement and balance of investment between partners. There is an amount of judgment in it. We tend to consider financial investments are as good demonstration of risk sharing. We have a sense, let's say, that if there is a large organization who usually provide, I'll give an example, okay, a large organization that provides spaces for residencies across the year, across a number of programs, and sends a letter that says, yes, you can access our resources at discount rate, as an example, okay, which may or may not have happened before. We wouldn't consider that as the same organization say, yes, we really look forward to engaging this partnership. We will, they commit 10,000 euro towards this partnership, and we will send some of our artists to Ireland, and we will welcome some of the artists from Ireland. Okay, this is really what we mean by reciprocal engagement and balance of investment. The quality of supports offered to artists and arts practitioners. Again, this is more in terms of, not so much in terms of the core of the clarity, but also sort of the quality in terms of payments, and again, just also administrative supports in a certain sense. So we want to make sure that the artists are well supported. And capacity to enable active engagement with new and diverse artists, communities, and audiences. Okay, so this is part of the Arts Council overall policy aims. Is what I mentioned before, is the added component. If there is active engagement in terms of diversity or audience engagement and communities, then this is obviously a positive aspect of within this program. And then finally, we'll build on new opportunities and or likely impact in the short term, medium term, and long term. So what does it mean? That these partnerships can be new, so which we consider a positive thing because it's building new relationships, creating new opportunities, or there can be also development of existing relationships. But in any case, we will look at what is the likely impact in the sense of short term, medium term, and long term. What does it mean? This is a reference to what I mentioned before under the international policy, is this sort of stable frameworks. Okay, so we'll always want to prioritize things that are that demonstrate the potential to continue in the future, okay, rather than clearly sort of be on uncertain grounds. And the final criterion is the feasibility of the proposal. There's very common criteria with across all our funding programs. Here we look at the practical components of a proposal in terms of the capacity to deliver on the proposal in terms of operational planning. Okay, so that would be your schedule of activities and how clearly structure each activities and so on. The quality or reciprocal engagement between partners. So we now mean really here in terms of the evidence across your budgets, investments, sense of income, sources of income, diversity of sources of income, level of available resources in relation to the program. So again, ambitious programs probably require high level of resources. Programs that are, smaller in scale, which is perfectly fine, will require less resources. And the financial information provided, okay, which is how clearly structured this financial information is. So these are the 3 assessment criteria. In terms of supporting material, same as last year. So in addition to the application form, unless you have access costs, which case you will need to submit also a separate budget. Okay, there's a separate budget template. Or if you work with vulnerable people, or so there are a number of other documents in specific cases. But in general, for this program, you need a complete application form, a detailed budget, setting out proposed income and expenditures for the proposed residency programs. So this is in addition to the budget, the short budget overview that is in the application form. Okay, we have the template available for download on the web page, and also a completed and signed memorandum of understanding, MOU, between the applicant and the main partners. So we also have a MOU template available for download. It's very simple. It's important that this is complete. If either of these 2 supporting materials are missing, your application will be deemed ineligible. We will not assess the application. So please pay attention to this, because it happens every year that 1 or 2 applications at least are missing information, or they submit this information like the MOU but is blank. That will be the same as not submitting it. Decision process. Okay, this project is based on the peer panel. So what happens is that we check application for eligibility. This is done by staff. Okay, this is the same missing supporting material or incomplete applications or people who are submit application after the deadline and those sort of things, administrative reasons. Then the advisors, okay, for each art form. So if you apply under visual arts, your application will be assessed by the visual arts advisors. We allocated this applications across the primary art form that you selected. They will assess the application. They will provide a preliminary shortlisting. The shortlisting on this program is very inclusive. Okay, we give specific instruction to be as inclusive as possible. We don't know shortlist applications that clearly are under sort of sufficient in any of the three assessment criteria that we discussed before. Otherwise, we sort of shortlist the applications. Okay. Once shortlisted, the applications will then go to a peer panel, which includes 4 well-established, usually professionals across various art forms and areas of practice. For instance, a venue director or I don't know, well-established manager or programmer for a festival. Maybe an artist well-established artist who's been working in visual arts. Okay, so there is a mix of people. They change every time. So when you write your application, please keep in mind that you are obviously addressing this sort of assessment criteria within the Arts Council. And then you're also speaking to people who might not be familiar with your organization as well, okay, which is the typical peer panel process that perhaps you have even attended some of them and you know how it works. Arts Council staff attends these panels, but we do not partake to the decision process. Panelists vote on each application independently. They're not guided or instructed to us on how to vote for each application. And then applications are adjudicated on the basis of the highest score, okay, and their available budget.